You wake up, follow rules, accept orders, repeat patterns, as if everything is perfectly natural. But what if I told you that this obedience didn't come from you? It was placed there, carefully, without you even noticing. Niccolò Machiavelli, one of the most controversial thinkers in history, exposed a dark trick used by leaders, governments, and institutions for centuries to make you obey without realizing you're being controlled. You think you're making your own choices, but maybe a long time ago, someone made that choice for you. This trick is still being used today, in the laws, in the systems, on social media, at your job. And the less you notice it, the more trapped you are. Today, I'm going to expose this hidden mechanism that shapes your life without your awareness. But before we dive in, make sure that little notification bell is turned on so you don't miss any content that could open your eyes, just like this one. Machiavelli revealed something that even today makes a lot of people uncomfortable. He exposed the kind of truth that those in power prefer to keep hidden. According to him, people obey not because they want to, but because they're led to. Believe they chose to obey. That's the essence of the trick. Sounds confusing? Don't worry, you'll get it. Imagine this. You're in a room with just two doors. Someone tells you that you can leave through whichever one you like. But what you don't realize is, one of the doors is locked, and the other leads exactly where they want you to go. You feel like you had a choice. But in reality, there was only one way out. That's the obedience trick Machiavelli described. You think you made the decision, but the decision was already made for you. And how do they do this? With a few very familiar tools: fear, manipulation, repetition, and most importantly, the illusion of choice. Machiavelli made this clear when he wrote, "Men are more easily ruled by fear than by love." And that quote isn't an isolated thought. It underpins many parts of his most famous book, The Prince. In it, Machiavelli shows how obedience is carefully built, not imposed directly. In other words, the smartest rulers don't issue commands openly. They shape the environment so that people willingly follow orders. He observed that when someone feels fear, whether it's fear of punishment, social rejection, or losing something they love, they become more obedient. But fear alone isn't enough. That's where manipulation comes in. Manipulation isn't just lying, it's building narratives, controlling information, repeating ideas until they feel natural. It's making you believe that following certain rules, accepting certain conditions, or obeying certain orders is what's best for you, even when it isn't. Machiavelli also spoke about the importance of the appearance of freedom. You need to think you're making your own choices. You obey, but with the comforting feeling that you chose to do so. It's a psychological game, and it still works today. Just look around. Social rules, political systems, algorithms that decide what you see online, contracts you accept without reading, behavior patterns you follow just to fit in. All of it seems voluntary, but much of it was designed so you wouldn't even realize you were being steered. Machiavelli didn't write these things as a villain. He wasn't saying, do this because it's evil. He was simply revealing what he saw happening behind the curtain of power. And his goal, as far as we can tell, was to warn us, to show how politics really works, far away from theory and morality. He didn't believe leaders needed to be good. He believed they needed to be effective. And to do that, the people's obedience often had to be earned through intelligence, not brute force. That's why understanding this trick is so important. Because if you don't recognize the mechanisms behind your own obedience, you become vulnerable. You become a pawn in a system that seems fair, but was designed so you'd follow the rules with a smile on your face. Machiavelli warned us about this over 500 years ago. The real question now is, are you listening to what he tried to tell us? Are you truly sure the decisions you make every day are your own? Or has someone already placed those ideas in your head long before you even noticed? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your experiences. And here's the part that makes people the most uncomfortable. This obedience trick didn't stay in the past, and it's definitely not stuck in the 16th century. It evolved, modernized, and today it's everywhere, showing up in ways you may have never even noticed. It's in your workplace, where you follow patterns, goals, and behaviors, often without questioning. It's in the education system, where what you learn and how you learn is carefully designed to shape people who fit in. It's in the laws, the rules, the social norms you accept as if they were natural. And most of all, it's in your social media feed. Today, it's no longer just kings and princes using the obedience trick. Now, those who control your attention hold the power. And attention, as Machiavelli might say, even if in different words, is power. You believe you're choosing what to consume, what to wear, what to support, even what to feel. But are those choices truly yours? Or are you being guided by influencers, algorithms, marketing campaigns, and carefully crafted narratives? Machiavelli would say, you're in the middle of a political game, but not the kind you see in elections or debates. This is a game of influence, of controlling perception, because as he taught, whoever controls perception controls behavior. Today, instead of castles and swords, we have screens and notifications, but the principle remains the same. Obedience is cultivated, not imposed. You see an influencer telling you how to live, an expert telling you what to eat, a politician telling you what to fear, and you follow, not because you're forced to, but because you believe it's the right thing to do. That's modern obedience, subtle, disguised, and incredibly effective. Machiavelli had a deep understanding of human behavior. He knew people crave safety, belonging, approval, and whoever provides those things, or appears to, gains the power to guide collective behavior. That's why, now more than ever, we need to revisit Machiavelli's ideas about manipulation, social control, and leadership. We need to look at the invisible structures shaping our actions, because today's world doesn't force you to obey. It makes you want to obey. And the most dangerous part is when you don't even realize you're doing it. Obedience lives in small habits. When you share an idea just because everyone's talking about it. When you buy something just because it was trending. When you repeat an opinion without truly thinking it through. Machiavelli would call this constructed obedience, built through constant influence. And that's why he's still relevant. Because while many people believe their decisions are free, Machiavelli reminds us, the illusion of freedom may be the most powerful form of control. He warned that true leadership, the kind that lasts, doesn't scream or force. It builds the right environment so that obedience feels natural. And that's exactly what's happening today, to you and to me. So here's the question. How many of your actions are truly your own? And how many were programmed by someone who knew exactly how to influence your behavior? The answer might feel uncomfortable, but it could also be liberating, because once you understand the trick, you can finally choose whether to keep obeying or not. If this content made you think differently, or opened your eyes in any way, leave a like. It shows us that it's worth continuing to bring thought-provoking ideas like this. And even better, you help this video reach more people who also need to wake up to this invisible trick. Here is the true warning Machiavelli left us. He said, the first method for assessing the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. This phrase may sound simple, but it carries one of the most dangerous warnings about power and obedience. Machiavelli is saying that you shouldn't just look at who's at the top, but at everyone around them. Power isn't upheld only by a charismatic leader. It depends on a network, a system, invisible gears that keep you obedient without you even realizing it. And here's the point that almost no one notices. You don't just obey a person. You obey a system. That system could be a government, a corporation, a school, a religion, or even the algorithms on social media. It doesn't command directly. It shapes the environment, the rules, the customs, and most importantly, the perception of what is right, what is normal, and what is acceptable. And the more invisible that system is, the more obedient you become. Because if you can't see the chains, you believe you are free. And that is when the trick is complete. Machiavelli warned that the most effective power is not the one that shouts, but the one that whispers, not the one that imposes itself through brute force, but the one that disguises itself as choice. And what's even scarier, this type of obedience feeds itself. When you believe you made a decision on your own, you defend it tooth and nail, even if that choice was placed in front of you precisely to make you think it was yours. This is Machiavelli. This is the psychology of power. Machiavelli understood governance, authority, and how to stay in control without raising your voice. He wrote about it in the 16th century, but it's as if he were describing today's world. Look around. How many times have you seen people obey absurd rules, defending contradictory ideas, fighting for systems that oppress them, and worse, thinking they're doing it by their own free will? That's the essence of Machiavelli's warning. It's not just about kings and princes. It's about modern leaders, corporate policies, digital influencers, any figure who understands how to manipulate perception. Machiavelli showed us that true power lies in the invisible, in those who understand human behavior, in those who know how to use fear, admiration, repetition, and the illusion of choice. That's why now, more than ever, we must look closely at the structures around us. We must ask, why are we following this? Who really benefits from our obedience? Machiavelli, with his brilliant and controversial mind, didn't want you to follow blindly. He wanted you to understand the game, because only those who understand the rules can break them. If this content made you reflect, just imagine what's still to come. Subscribe to the channel now and start uncovering what's hidden behind the decisions you don't even realize you're making. With each video, another piece of the puzzle is revealed. Machiavelli understood something that many people ignore. Human beings are afraid of chaos. Instability is frightening. Uncertainty is paralyzing. So what people want most, even without realizing it, is predictability. And that's exactly where the trick lies. Rulers, leaders, authorities, all of them, directly or indirectly, have learned from Machiavelli's teachings. He realized that if you offer controlled fear, a moderate dose of hope, and point to a common enemy, people will follow you, even if it leads them down dangerous paths, even if it goes against their own interests. Machiavelli and the psychology of power are deeply connected for one simple reason. He knew how to shape the collective mind. He didn't need brute force. He used logic, perception, and the careful construction of narratives. And above all, he understood the psychology of submission. In The Prince, he makes it clear, men judge more by the eyes than by the hands. In other words, what appears to be true has more power than what actually is. And what does that have to do with obedience? Everything. Machiavelli understood that people will accept control if they believe it brings them safety. Authority is sustained not just through force, but through psychological persuasion. That's why Machiavellian manipulation go hand in hand. His strategy was to make people think they were making their own decisions, when in fact they were being guided the entire time. And today, that's more present than ever. You think you're choosing what to consume, what to believe, what to follow, but are those choices really yours? Machiavelli and human behavior meet at exactly that point. The art of influencing, without the victim noticing. That's why his work is still so studied today. Machiavelli and social control are key themes to understand the modern world. He taught that if a ruler wants to stay in power, he needs to understand not just politics, but the nature of human emotions. Fear, pride, anger, the feeling of belonging, These are the invisible gears of power. Machiavelli and influence are inseparable. He knew that building a narrative reinforced by symbols, repetition, and emotion was enough to keep the masses under control. You don't need violence, you don't need to shout, you just need to create the right environment with the right emotions and the right triggers. And just like that, obedience happens. That's why Machiavellian power remains so relevant. Today, he wasn't just talking about kings, he was talking about you, me, all of us. He spoke about our desire to feel safe, even if it means giving up freedom. He spoke about how easy it is to manipulate once you understand the right emotions. Machiavelli and modern leaders have much more in common than we'd like to admit. Today, charismatic leaders, politicians, corporations, and even algorithms use the same principles. They create fear, offer a way out, feed hope, and point to a culprit for all problems. And just like that, millions obey. The scariest part, it all feels natural. People don't feel like they're being controlled. They feel like they're part of something greater. And that is the most effective trap of all. Machiavelli and human behavior show us that deep down, obedience is comfortable. It's easier to follow orders than to question the system. Easier to believe in authority than to take responsibility. But understanding this changes everything. Once you start seeing the invisible mechanisms that shape your decisions, you stop being a piece on the board and start seeing the entire game. And that's exactly why Machiavelli remains so relevant. He didn't just explain how the powerful think, he revealed how we, as a society, are shaped to obey. What we're talking about here isn't just some old concept buried in history books, it's something present in your routine, in the small details of everyday life. Have you ever stopped to think why you accept certain rules without ever questioning them? Why you follow certain paths just because everyone else does? Machiavelli warns us that obedience, when blind, is not loyalty, it's control. And that control is silent, subtle. You don't even realize when you're being manipulated. That's why he said true power doesn't shout, it whispers. While you think you're in charge, someone has already moved the pieces for you. The more you recognize the trick of obedience, the more you begin to ask the questions that really matter. This rule I follow, who really benefits from it? This choice I made, was it really mine? And what if, deep down, I'm living in a script someone else wrote for me? These questions hurt. They're uncomfortable, but they're necessary, because once you begin to see the mechanisms behind obedience, something changes. You stop being just another part of the system. You become aware, and an aware person is much harder to control. That's what Machiavelli wanted us to understand. True power isn't imposed only through force or laws. It infiltrates beliefs, customs, habits, until it feels normal. He didn't say this as someone who wanted a worse world. On the contrary, he exposed these strategies so that we, the people, could protect ourselves from them. That's why studying Machiavelli and authority, Machiavelli and governance, Machiavelli and human behavior is still so important today. Now that you know this, you have two choices. Forget what you heard and keep obeying without questioning, or use this knowledge as a weapon to wake up. The trick of obedience is real, and it's being used all the time. If this video opened your eyes, like it now to help strengthen this message. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel for more content that reveals the behind the scenes of power, influence, and control. And before you leave, do one simple thing. Check if the notification bell is turned on. That way you won't miss the next videos that will keep making you think and give you tools to stop being manipulated so easily. Stay alert and question everything.